We'll call the meeting to order. And pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any comments on agenda items? Comments on agenda items? Okay, none. Approval of minutes?
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Item 5, business and finance reports.
Motion approved.
Second.
It's a motion to approve 1 through 6. And a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Superintendent's report.
I'm looking for a motion to approve items 1 through 9 on the regular agenda and items 1 through 4 on the supplemental agenda.
Motion approved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And you included the supplemental, you said, Heather?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Yes.
Under that number 4, that's the application for snow day versus
Yes.
day.
Yes. And so I'm completing the application. It has to be submitted by June 1st, and I just need your blessing to apply, and so that's what that is about.
So what does that mean? That means we can be virtual on those days if it's a snow day, or?
Okay, so there's two different things, again, like there was this year. I am anticipating that the state will provide us with the waiver that they provided us with last year, which gives us the waiver on the 990 hours, which means that we can go virtual, okay? We really don't need both. However, there's that, and then there's the flexible instructional days bill. So that is, yes, we go virtual, and we cover these things.
So we don't add days on the end of the year if we get this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and, yeah, that's what it means, okay? And we're in a much better position. The last time we applied for this, we were using Abington, and, it was just,
Sure.
we were just building the plane in the air, so now I'm confident we'll be approved.
Anything else? Okay, we have motion and a second on items 1 through 9 on the regular agenda and 1 through 4 on the supplemental. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 So the only other thing I'd like to add before we move on from the superintendent's report, Steve Travers here tonight, and you just approved his retirement, and congratulations, Steve, and thanks for all you've done for the district, and I know we'll continue to do, up until the time that you leave, and we just really appreciate, you're a man of many talents, and so thank you so much.
If I may, Steve's done a lot more than he's been given credit for. I've watched him in action. He'll be missed.
Yes, for sure.
And I'll miss all of you guys, and I'll miss the whole school. So.
Sure you will.
I appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Do you have anything else?
No, I do not. Shane's going to do a presentation on the budget. I will tell you, just as an update, that we are currently tracking 3 cases at the high school and 1 at the IC. The Sunday shutdowns really help. They're really preventing us from having to miss more school. So we made it through another week, and that's great news. And and a lot of great activities going on this week with the seniors. We did Vespers last night. Senior speeches were Tuesday night, and both were really enjoyable. It really gave me personally, Todd, I don't know about you, but I drove home and it lifted my spirits to see those kids in their caps and gowns. It was like that. I run around that corner and saw them all, and I was like, okay, all right, this is good. So, yeah. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff going on. Volleyball game, 2 of our board members are not here tonight because they're at the volleyball game. And the girls softball team won. And there's a jazz concert going on.
We just had a string ensemble.
String ensemble, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Just finished.
It's a busy time of year.
So Heather, real quick, so our cases will reset going into next week.
Yep, they reset every Monday. We're at 0.
Okay, so hopefully we won't need this because we're seeing cases go down. So was that changed now to guidance versus mandatory?
If you're in moderate for 2 weeks, we have not been in moderate for 2 weeks. Yeah. So, because I called the Department of Health to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Any committee reports?
There was a curriculum committee and neither, okay, good.
I'll do my best. I was really interested in how you want to tell you about it. It was for math curriculum, and it's changing to be really more to a Eureka math structure. It's a very, I'm going to say good, for lack of a better word, program. It really builds upon itself. A lot of intelligence, and we tried it out this year's 5th grade, which I have up this year, so I got to see it firsthand. And I think it's really an excellent way for us to get our math where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I will say too that both Mary Jean and, most curriculum directors will use, there's ed reports, and they basically evaluate, and Eureka Math is one of the top-rated programs that is out there today.
That was the only one?
One quick go back to the discussion we just had. So I want to thank Todd for organizing the schedule today. It was really cool to see such a great, huge group out there supporting the girls softball team. So we had a unique opportunity there with, I guess, them needing to get out a little bit early for their senior awards night. So I think it was just a great idea. So thank you, Todd.
Okay. Moving on to unfinished business, we have the next year's school calendar.
Right, so we put together a calendar based on your discussion the other night, and we're bringing it back to you. For your consideration, we moved the spring days off, if you will, to March instead of having them around the Easter break. We still have Good Friday and Easter Monday off. We have Martin Luther King Day off. It provides us for a break after the 3rd marking period, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, and then the following Monday, the 28th of March. So, if we, for some weird reason, Bill, we would have to use up a day during the course of the year, right, we would just knock off the 28th, all right, and that people would still get a nice break. They just wouldn't get the Monday after the weekend.
So the idea would be, assuming we get that waiver, we would go in the base plan with doing virtual snow days if that was the case.
We can do virtual snow days, or if we do flexible instructional days, that one, there's no question.
Okay.
And you're not really messing with the hours. So
Okay.
that's
So
the,
once we can see how that plays
yeah,
out. we can-
I'm really confident about it this year.
Okay. Do we need then to adopt this then tonight?
Yeah, if you would.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt it?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay,
you.
next we have the ever popular budget discussion.
It's like it continues.
When do you have to vote on the final budget?
June 30th. Before June 30th.
No later than June 30th.
So I told her I got it. I asked her to put a slide in the show.
Yeah. Oh,
Because that was
okay.
late at night and I just missed it.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me? Is that picking up at all?
I would put it up a little higher.
All right, so we are going to continue this evening with the next chapter in our discussion regarding the 21-22 budget. I have started with this budgetary timeline just as a reminder each time. We are now quickly approaching the June 10th date. So as a reminder, June 10th is when we will seek final approval for the final budget. So I have shared this slide before. This is a comparison of fixed expenses for the 21-22 year versus 2021 with the projected increases. Again, this is just the areas that we would consider to be fixed expenses, really to highlight where the bulk of our expenses are as a district. This accounts for approximately 85% of the total cost in the district. And the majority of these are contractually obligated. So structurally, it's very difficult to make changes in each of these areas outside of contracts. So tonight I have a few graphs where there is a fair amount of data, so I will use this as just an opportunity to point out some key things that we've not yet discussed. So I know that there has been discussion about declining enrollment. So what I did was I took a look at some of the districts kind of in the surrounding area that are experiencing declining enrollments and looked at the impact of that data on expenses per ADM. So ADM is average daily membership, so really that's enrollment, that's your student count. And this data comes directly from PDE's website. And you'll notice I took a snapshot here of a 5-year window. Actually on PDE's website, the most recent data that's currently posted is 18-19. So the data is a year or two old, but I do think that it serves as a good point of reference as we start to look at how we benchmark against other districts in the coming years. So what this shows is that costs often lag when there is a decrease in enrollment. So what you see here, if you follow the colors through, purple is Tonkanic. So what this is showing is Tonkanic's, sorry, I'm trying to use the pointer here. Tonkanic's data is the purple line, and you can see that our enrollment has continued to decline over the last 5 years, and the last 2 years have followed a similar trend. But you can see that our expenses per ADM have slightly gone up. So what that means is you are doing things to decrease cost, which is what we talked about during the last meeting, but it is not necessarily tracking directly in relation to the number of students that you have in the building. That is very similar at each of these districts. So I've got Dallas up here, Wayne Highlands. Those are just a couple that are in our area that are seeing a decrease in enrollment. Dallas is a good example because they are seeing a similar trend in terms of enrollment. And while their costs are lower on a per ADM basis, they are also seeing a similar increase. So it's important to just kind of keep that in mind. So when everyone talks about a decrease in enrollment, the costs do not necessarily track directly with that decrease in enrollment. This is just a slightly different snapshot. So what this looks at is specifically 2018, 2019, and again takes a cross-section of schools that are in the surrounding area and looks at cost per ADM. So this is total expenses per ADM, and there's a million different ways that you can slice and dice cost per ADM, and even on PDE's website you'll see it represented a number of different ways. But I wanted to show this just to kind of give you kind of a relative idea of where we currently stack up relative to some of the other school districts in our area. There are a number of districts like Trail that are in a similar, I would say, area range in terms of cost per ADM. And then you have schools like Abington and Dallas who are significantly lower. There's about a $4,000 to $5,000 difference per ADM between Tonkanic and some schools like Abington and Dallas. So the request that I had was to take a look at those couple of school districts that are on the lower end in our area and start to kind of peel back to understand where are some of those costs. And so this graph, while this is a little bit muddy, I want to just take a second to kind of highlight a few things here. First off, this data shows a comparison between Tonkanic and Abington and Dallas. Abington is quite a bit larger than Tonkanic, so Abington has about roughly 3,500 kids. Dallas is pretty close in size to Tonkanic. They have about 2,400 kids. Again, I'm just kind of ballparking here. And so what this graph shows is in both cases, both of these schools are operating at a lower cost per ADM for their cost structure. And this shows where some of those key differences are between the districts. And there's a couple that I would like to highlight. One is special programs, which really boils down to special education. So there is a relatively significant difference between Tonkanic and those two school districts. Regular programs would be just regular instruction. So while Abington is a lot closer, there's a much bigger gap relative to Dallas. So that requires a lot more investigating. So I don't want to present this data in a way that just says, hey, go do what they're doing. It's not quite as simple as that. So I think it warrants further conversation with some of those schools to understand, what their structure looks like, because there's a number of things that could factor into that. One could be the number of teachers to student ratio. Okay, so the number of students you have in each classroom. So if I have more kids in a classroom, chances are you're probably going to have fewer teachers in order to support the same number of kids. That's one piece. The other piece is contractual agreements. So not having their contracts in front of us, it's difficult to say what their salary scale may look like and how that may contribute to those costs. And so again, I think this is really just a preliminary look, because it often comes up in conversation when we start to talk about the budget and we start to talk about how we're performing relative to other schools. Transportation is another key piece that really we have very little opportunity to be able to influence. A lot of that is determined because of the size of our district and the number of miles that our buses need to go in order to transport. There are also differences in our vocational programs. So there are structural differences in how each of these districts operate. But again, I think this is really just a preliminary look at some of this data so that we can continue to have that discussion over the next couple of years to really understand how do we continue to deliver cost improvements. So this slide I have shared before, and really what this shows is just the difference between our budgeted expenses and budgeted revenue for the coming year, and where that puts us relative to the fund balance. So we are continuing to show a deficit that would eat into the fund balance. We are doing better this year than what was originally projected, but we do anticipate that there will be some amount of deficit this year, which is what was anticipated. And so going forward, looking at next year, we currently are projecting that the ending general fund balance with no adjustments would be about $2.8 million. So, and I know that it is always a topic of conversation. It was in the paper even this week about Lackawanna Trail and where they're at relative to their decision to raise taxes. And it is an important part of this overall conversation. So I want to share a little bit of data about some of the historical trends regarding taxes. First off, why would a district like Tonkanic consider raising taxes? And this gets back to the piece around our fixed expenses and our ability to adjust our finances to be able to accommodate contractually agreed to adjustment in fixed expenses. So if we just look at the three buckets of wages, retirement, transportation, that is what we're anticipating the costs will go up in the coming year. A 1 mil tax increase in Tonkanic Area School District generates approximately $280,000. So you can quickly see that you can't do this with one or the other. You can't just reduce costs or raise taxes. It really is going to be a combination of both over the coming years. So this is the historical tax rates in mills for the Tonkanic Area School District. So if you look back to 2014, we were at 72 mills. You can see that there were several years where we were flat in here, two consecutive, or not two consecutive, but 2 blocks of time where we were flat for 2 consecutive years, and is currently this year at 78 mills. So what does that mean to the average taxpayer in Tonkanic Area School District? So what I did here was just tried to show the impact of those tax increases year to year. So down at the bottom, you'll see what tax years we actually were at those different millage rates. So you can see 2 years, 16, 17, 17, 18 at 75 mills, so on and so forth. The median household assessment is approximately $30,000. So again, that's assessment. That is not what your market value is. That's assessed. 1 mil is $1 for every $1,000 of assessed value. So when you do that, what that shows is the average cost of 1 mil is about $30. And what I showed was what the tax due on face would have been during each of those periods. So you can see that at the 75 mil rate, tax due was $22.50, at 76, at 78, what those respective amounts were. So what that's showing is that the total increase to the average payer in that period of time for the median household assessment was $90. So what I just show here is at 79 and 80 mils for your perspective where that would put us. So again, that would be an increase of approximately $30 to median household assessment for each of those adjustments. So at this point, we are very close to the end, so that you will no longer have to see any more of these presentations regarding the budget over the next couple of weeks. On June 10th, we will present the final budget for your approval, and then we will continue to move forward. So are there any questions?
Could you go back to the slide about cost per ADM?
Sure. This one or the one before?
No, keep going back.
This
That one?
Yep.
So the cost per student right now for Tonkanic is 20,000 or 21,000? I mean,
21,000.
It's about, so like I said, there are several ways that you can look at this. In 18-19, it was approximately 20,000.
right.
Correct. And I would say
It's not now, Bill.
it has come down.
It has come down.
It has come down. And, you know, the number that often is used when we also talk about cyber charter costs is also a little lower because there's a separate calculation that is used for that figure, because we often talk about a cost per ADM when we're talking about cyber charter expense and how that is billed for students in our district. So that number is also a little bit different. But yes, it has come down over the last couple of
And
years.
Bill, I just want to say that number, as of this last year, was 15,000, approximately. So that it has come down.
This ADM number has come down to 15,000, or the cyber
Now,
charter
the
number?
cyber charter, which is a little
Cyber
bit
charter,
lower
yeah.
than the calculation that Shane is using, is now down to 15,000. Last year it was 17,000. I don't remember the year before, but I mean, that is coming down. So unfortunately, we can't get data off of PDE's website for any other district except our own up to beyond the 18-19 school year.
Right. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So these are the districts that basically touch us, with the exception of Wyoming area, and right, Wyoming area is the only other district that.
Wyalusing.
Yeah,
And
well,
Wyalusing.
Wyalusing.
Okay.
And Wyalusing for 18-19 was 24,000.
Yeah. And,
So-
yeah, go ahead.
So I guess, I mean, from a dollars and cents, there's obviously two ways, right? You raise more money or you cut costs. And I think we've had this discussion a couple of times in the past, and I think what I'd like, and I know we're going into the budget, but I'd like some more, and I think you mentioned this, Shane, what are the other district, in other words, like, we're talking about programs, we're talking about class size, we're talking about total numbers of employees, we're talking about, I know there's things contractually that we can't change, we're tied into that. I think we can't really squeeze any more out of that 14% of
Right,
those
I would agree.
fixed
Right.
costs. So,
Right.
you know, I think we're gonna have to really try, and I know we've got this ESSER money coming in, but you know, that's a kind of a separate discussion.
Right.
So I think we really have to dive into this in the sense of, you know, what is our strategic plan? And I think this is, Heather, you brought this up. What is the strategic plan financially? Like, where are we going? Like, I know we've spoken in the community about class size. Nobody wants to hear large class sizes, but what are the other districts doing?
Sure.
You know, and I think collectively you have to look at, you know, we have a great education system, it's wonderful, but where is the trend going? If the numbers keep going down, we have to have that difficult discussion.
Sure.
And I'm just bringing that up now because I know we're going into this budget cycle, and then about July 20th, we all forget about the budget until next year.
Right.
So, and I think we really start, you know, this is something that we should, as a board, bring forward and really start drilling down on, you know, what are the good ideas that fit our model in our district? Because I think we have different, you know, ag and red tile programs that maybe other
Correct.
districts
Totally agree.
don't have.
They don't have
And I
them
think-
in-house like
I
we
think
do.
it's nice for the community to come and say, hey, don't raise taxes. And then, hey, don't cut any programs. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
But I think if we educate ourselves in the community about what we have that's special and explain why there is a higher cost per student for our district compared to other districts, I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that was perfect, and so that's not gonna help us for this budget cycle, but we can't lose track of that because that's what happens.
Right.
And so we're gonna have to make a decision on what we do with taxes in this budget in that next meeting, and then we're gonna have to decide what structural changes, if any, we're going to make going forward. And so I was actually I was surprised that this data was as close as it was, because Shane got the 18-19 data, and we weren't too out of line other than Abington and Dallas, and there's some real structural differences which she hit on between vocational programs. The district sizes are very different. The concentration of special ed programs, I think, are a little bit different in our district versus them. But then that next phase of, we can't run a $2.8 million deficit very long. And so something has to give. You know, there's got to be probably some revenue, and then there's got to be some associated cuts and things like that.
And I just think that has to be brought to the forefront going into the next school year for sure. I mean, we can't just not talk about it until the next.
That's right.
The
And
next
what we
budget.
don't want to do is, like I said.
And not that we didn't have a lot to talk about this last year either. We get it.
Yeah, that was it. We just want to wait until there's, we don't want to wait until there's a crisis. So we can get through this year, but then
Yeah.
if we're eating $1.5 million even from that fund balance, it's going to be a crisis quickly. Yep, thank you.
Shane,
Yes.
what is our millage limitation as to what millage we can raise?
That's a good question. I will follow up on that because I don't remember what the index was, but it's definitely over 2 mils. I want to say it's closer to 3 mils.
Yeah, wasn't it like 2.76, something, that's
Right.
sticks in my
I can
head.
get that.
Upper 2.6s, 2.7s, I thought I remember.
What the upper limit of the millage that we could raise, which would be the index. So, yes.
I think it's the next slide, you have a breakdown, do you have a breakdown with Tonkanic on it?
So in this scenario, Tonkanic, these are all the costs that are, if you assume Tonkanic is X number, this is how much less each of those districts are. So what you're asking for would be to see what would be the total cost per ADM for each of those districts. I can bring that.
So, I'm just trying to put this, so like the 805, that Abington, that would be $805 less than what we spent.
You
on.
got it.
Okay.
That's correct. Yep. Yep.
Thanks, Shane.
So, yeah, I think you're doing a great job framing this out for us, so thank you for putting all this
Yeah,
together.
absolutely. I mean, and, there's no question that there's a lot of data, and, it's important that as a board, if you have things that you would like to see, that you continue to, bring those to me, and I will continue to work with the other districts to, again, peel the onion and start to look at, those next layers.
I would think that Abington and Dallas are probably much more compact, land-wise, acreage-wise, size-wise than we are, which would attribute to why their transportation costs are considerably less in that category.
Correct.
Doesn't help us any, but that's the reason why. Thank you, Shane. Okay, on to new business. The Visa account is there for your review, as well as the Kelly Services substitute teacher fill rate. And we have several items under new business to approve. Looking to approve Eureka Math, bus and van contracts. Let's do those, then we need to do the school board treasurer
Motion
after that.
approved, 3 and 4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on numbers 3 and 4. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Swilly?
No.
Mr. Wagner?
Hang on a second. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 5, need a resolution to approve a...
Motion, John Burke.
Second.
I think I hear the train coming, John.
I also put them in for 4% raise.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
John, one thing real quick, John, if you remember, you weren't here last year, but we got you this
We
one.
still, right, I didn't even just show up last year.
Doesn't get you out of it. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Absolutely.
Mr. Farr?
Yep. We'll
I
go for
think I
that.
probably need to abstain from that.
You can vote on that.
Well, there's no money involved, so.
No, you can
Oh,
vote
yeah, I
for
can,
yourself.
that's right. Just
You
like
can.
being the president.
You don't get paid for it.
Just no contract, no contract, John.
Okay, item 6. Looking to
Move
approve.
Caroline Lawson gets the
Second.
Shane's coming again. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Definitely.
Mr. Whitener?
Yep.
Mr. Farr?
Happily, yes. Okay. Item 7 is approving June 11th as an in-person instruction day. Let's take that.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion?
There's not going to be any devices at the homes. It would be senseless not to make it in person.
Exactly. Anything else? Roll call.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Whitener?
Yep.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 8 is for renewal of insurance coverage.
Motion approved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Roll call.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Whitener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 9 is approving an MOU between the district and the Education Association regarding the summer hybrid credit recovery program.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. In discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Dr. Cavola?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Whitener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory? Yes. Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 10 would be first reading of board policies of extracurricular participation by home education students. Title I, comparability of services, electronic signatures / records, and volunteers.
No.
No, I didn't think
If
so.
you guys review those and you
First
have any
reading.
questions or feedback, give me a call in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other public comments? Questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we're going to go to executive session, and we will not be returning. It will be for personnel issues.
Okay.